Welcome to my first foray into Naruto Shippuden. A little background, I watched Naruto in middle school and high school and a bit in college, and I've been watching Boruto clips, and I thought, well, I might as well actually watch Naruto Shippuden for the first time. Anyone who's listening to this who hasn't seen Naruto, and you're like, what do I need to watch Shippuden? Naruto is split into two parts, part 1 and part 2. Naruto is part 1 and Shippuden is part 2. What you need to know from Naruto going into Shippuden is that you need to know the main characters Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Orochimaru, the other ninjas his age, Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro, the Saiyan siblings. So if you watched part 1 and Sasuke left the village, then you don't need to keep watching Naruto after that for part 1, and you can jump straight into Shippuden. So, Naruto Shippuden starts at, it's been 3 years since Naruto ended, and Naruto left the village to train with Jiraiya, the frog guy, and he's come back to the village. So, the first thing that happens when they come back to the village is Tsunade, the Hokage, is like, cool, you're back to the village, so I need to know how strong you are. And she has Naruto and Sakura take the bell test again with Kakashi. And it's a really cool sequence because you get to see everything that they did in the first part and all the mistakes that they made. And you get to see that they've gotten stronger and that they've gotten smarter. We learned during the bell test that Sakura has been training with Tsunade herself, and that she's kind of becoming like a Tsunade 2.0, where she's really good at medical jutsu, and she's able to use her super superior chakra control to give herself super strength. During this time, so what the show does is it'll do one segment from one point of view, and then it will switch to like other characters elsewhere in the world. I'm not always going to talk about it in the order that it's happening in, but rather this is what plot A is and this is what plot B is. So during the bell test, it's showing us the Sand Village, and we learn that Gaara has become the Kazekage, which is the Hokage of the area, and we learn about this like sketchy organization called the Akatsuki. We're not really quite sure what they do yet. We just know that they want the tailed beasts, and that means Naruto is a target. So since Gaara is the vessel of the One Tail, the Akatsuki wants him. We don't know why they want all the tailed beasts, but they want the tailed beasts. So what happens is that the Sand Village gets a tip-off from Jiraiya that's like, yo, watch out for this guy. These guys, like, they're gonna come probably attack you because Gaara is the One Tails. And so, true to their word, they get attacked by the Akatsuki by two members who we will find out their names is Deidara and Sasori. Deidara is the clay guy, so his ability is to take explosive clay that he chews. He has hands in his mouth, and if he's like chewed the clay, he can then sculpt it, and it becomes explosive, and so he makes animals. We don't know what Sasori's power is yet. So Deidara goes to attack the Sand Village, and he and Gaara have like this aerial fight. And what happens is that Gaara's doing like pretty okay. He's using his sand, but Deidara tries to attack the village, so Gaara has to protect the village with all the sand, and it's like a huge amount. It's covering the entire village. So after that, what happens is that Gaara at one point uses his sand coffin on one of the other guy's arms, and it rips off his arms. And what he did in that point was insert explosive clay into Gaara's sand. We find out that Gaara has two types of sand. He can control normal sand, and he has like faster sand. That's the sand that he keeps in the gourd on his back. And so since he attacked Deidara's arm with the faster sand, since he has those like hand mouth things, that clay is now explosive. So he put explosive clay into Gaara's sand, and so Gaara went to protect himself from a projectile, and then the Deidara exploded that clay right in his like sand shield. So Gaara's taken some damage, he's taken a beating, and so now Gaara realizes and is afraid for his village. He doesn't know how much of the sand is explosive. So he, through a huge amount of effort, takes all the sand that's been protecting the village and moves it outside of the village so that it can't harm anyone if it is explosive. An interesting character moment here is that this shows us two things, one about Gaara and one about Deidara. It shows us that Gaara, in part 2, this older Gaara, cares about his village. He's the Kazekage and he wants to protect them, but even in this instance, he completely wants to make sure that nobody gets hurt during this fight, and he's doing everything he can to ensure that. Instead of continuing the fight as is, he takes the time and all the energy and all the chakra to move all of that sand outside of the village. We see a character moment for Deidara in this because he doesn't attack Gaara while this is happening, which I think is an interesting way to characterize an antagonist or a villain, is to say that, of course he's here to take Gaara and, for the Akatsuki. And he could have done it while Gaara was, doing all of this effort, moving all this sand, but he doesn't. And I think that's an interesting thing. So he's not bloodthirsty. He's not incredibly violent for violence's sake. So I think it's an interesting way to characterize him. So back to the fight. Gaara does get beaten. Deidara has more explosive clay, and because Gaara is weakened from moving and protecting the village, and his own sand is full of explosive clay, Deidara is able to knock him out, and this has been an aerial battle the whole time, and so he takes Gaara on his clay bird and he flies out of the village. So what happens next is that Kankuro, Gaara's older brother, is in the village, and he's very distraught. His little brother, who's the Kazekage, just got taken, and he goes after Gaara immediately. There's an explosion at the front gates. We find out that there must be some sort of traitor, because the front gates to the village are covered in dead bodies. All of the guard duties that got increased, nobody is there anymore. And so some of the sand Jonin, if Naruto ranks, Genin, that's Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura in part 1. Chunin is a middle rank ninja. Iruka Sensei, Shikamaru, those are Chunin. Jonin are then Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai. They're high enough ranked to look over a team of 3 Genin. Those are Jonin. And then you have the Kages. So you have the 3rd Hokage, you have Tsunade, who's the 5th Hokage, you have Gaara, who's the Kazekage. Those are the Kage. And the other ninja rank is there's Anbu members, which will be relevant for the next arc. And Anbu members are somewhere between Chunin and Jonin. I'm not sure if it's specified it yet. And they do kind of assassination, information retrieval. They're elite ninja forces. So those are the ninja ranks. So Kankuro is a Jonin. and he goes after Gaara with some other Sand Jonin, and they get attacked at the village gate. There's explosive tags on some of the dead bodies of the Jonin that were protecting the entrance to the village. So Kankuro is able to save some of his comrades using his puppets, and after the explosion, he goes in pursuit of Gaara. So what happens is he catches up with Gaara and the two Akatsuki members who kidnapped him. Gaara is kind of like his sand armor is falling off, so Kankuro follows that sand because it looks a bit different. And so Kankuro goes to fight these two guys, and the guy we didn't see fight earlier, whose name we don't know yet, in universe, he's like, okay, Deidara, you take Gaara, I'm gonna fight this guy. So Kankuro pulls out all three of his puppets and gets his ass handed to him almost immediately. And he ends up getting poisoned while fighting this guy. And because Kankuro is a puppeteer, the guy says, it's so nostalgic to see somebody use the puppets that I made so well. And so this clues us into the identity. So we find out that this guy is Sasori of the Red Sands, and that he's like a legendary puppeteer from the Sand Village who went rogue and went missing 20 years ago. So because Kankuro fought so well, he just leaves him. He's like, the poison's gonna kill you in 3 days. Have fun, good luck, and he leaves to go catch up with Deida and Gaara. It's around this time that we switch back over to the Leaf Village. Tsunade, the fifth Hokage, she got a message from the Sand Village by Messenger Hawk, which I think is an interesting detail. The show doesn't say oh, she just knows. No, it shows Baki in the Sand Village. He's a Jonin who was the Jonin for the Sand Siblings, sending the fastest messenger hawk to the Leaf Village. So Tsunade gets this messenger hawk, and she said, okay, Team Kakashi, you're going to go on this mission. And Team Kakashi at this point is Sakura, Naruto, and Kakashi. Because Sasuke is gone, they don't have a third member. Her assistant, Shizune, is kind of skeptical. She's like, I don't think that Naruto should go on this mission. He's a tailed beast, and, they're kind of after tailed beasts. And Tsunade's kind of like, no, we don't have any other options. Somebody needs to go do this mission. They are the only people available. They will do this mission. So the Team Kakashi leaves, and it takes 3 days to get to the Sand Village. Tamari, the older sister of Gaara, has been acting as a liaison between the Sand Village and the Leaf Village. And so she was leaving at this time to go back to the Sand Village. They've been preparing in tandem with each other for the upcoming Chunin exams, which Shikamaru is in charge of. Shikamaru is also in charge of kind of being Tamari's guide around the Leaf Village. I do know how Naruto ends, and I do know what the pairings are for Boruto. So it is interesting to see already in the first arc of Shippuden that Kishimoto is having interactions between Tamari and Shikamaru. I do think it's interesting. So anyway, Tamari had already started to leave towards the Sand Village, and she sees the messenger hawk, and she's kind of like, oh, that's strange. I wonder what's happening. And then at a tea house where she's eating, her cup breaks. And so she has a bad feeling about it. And as she goes back to the Sand Village, she gets intercepted by Team Kakashi. Team Kakashi lets her know what's happening, and she's very concerned about, less so of her village, but very concerned for Gaara, which is a really good change to see. In part 1, both Kankuro and Tamari were really afraid of Gaara, so it's interesting that in part 2 you see how much that they've all grown together. that she's concerned for her younger brother as a person, not her younger brother who's a walking human weapon. So Team Kakashi heads towards the Leaf Village. At the same time, it cuts away to the Sand Village to let us know about like their politics. If you're kind of wondering, I have bullet points, so I'm going through the bullet points I've written for this whole arc, all 32 episodes. So that's what some of these pauses are, is me looking at them. So we find out that there are these two old people in the Sand Village named Chiho and Ibisu, and they're siblings, and they've like retired, but they have some sort of like political clout. So Baki goes and is like, "Hey, you should help us," and they're like, "No, I'm retired." This is Chiho speaking, the older sister. "Oh no, I'm retired. Like, all I want to do is to see my grandson's face." To which Baki says, "Well, good thing I've come to you because this is about your grandson." So this is when we kind of find out that Sasori, the puppet, the guy who defeated Kankuro, is the grandson of Chiho. So she agrees to help because she's like, "What the fuck is happening? What do you mean my grandson, who's been missing for 20 years, has suddenly resurfaced?" So it goes back and talks about some of the politics in the village. What's the most important thing is to we find out about the third missing Kazekage. So this is the Kazekage before Gaara's father, who is the fourth. And we find out that he went missing 20 years ago, and they never found out what happened to him. And the village at the time dedicated so many resources to finding them that they were attacked by someone else who noticed their weakness, and it created a lot of political instability. So that's kind of a tension that's playing in this arc, that some of the characters are like, we need to divert everything we can to finding Gaara, and other characters are like, we absolutely cannot repeat the mistakes that we made with the third Kazekage going missing. What's important is to stay strong and find a Kazekage as soon as possible. So the Team Kakashi, 3 days have passed. They end up in the Sand Village, and Kankuro is not doing so hot. The Sand Medical Ninja cannot figure out an antidote for this poison at all. Chiho, who is a poison expert, cannot figure this out. Sakura comes in and she immediately goes into medical ninja mode and looks at Kankuro and she's like, "Okay, I know what to do. Give me these." She takes over the situation. And this is when the show really fleshes out and shows us. It's a good example of show versus tell. It shows us her medical expertise that she learns under Tsunade. So she's able to extract the poison from Kankuro and create an antidote. For the poison, there's some dialogue that happens with her and the Sand Ninjas talking about like all of the medical herbs that are available, and they say that some are hard to grow and they don't have as much as they need or as much as they would like to stock because it's hard to grow things. This will be relevant later in the arc, but right now it's just kind of world building exposition. So Team Kakashi is like, "Okay, we are going to go find Gaara. We're going to go find out what happened to him." And they need a way to find him. Luckily, when Kankuro fought Sasori earlier, he was able to grab some of his clothing, and so Kakashi uses his ninja dogs to track the smell of the Akatsuki. So this is how they're going to find Gaara. At the same time, before they head out, Tsunade, who's a horrible gambler, ends up winning the lottery that she got put into, like a minor lottery, and this immediately tips her off to like something bad is going to happen. So she calls another ninja team to go assist Team Kakashi and to assist in finding the Kazekage. The team that ends up going is Team Guy. So you have Guy Sensei, Rock Lee, Tenten, and Neji. The last thing to mention in this part of the arc is Chiho as a character. So when she sees Kakashi, she immediately attacks him and calls him the White Fang of the Leaf, something like that. And Kakashi's like, no, you've got the wrong person. That's my father. So she said that the White Fang killed her son and her daughter-in-law, Sasori's parents. And when she finds out that it's the wrong guy, she doesn't attack him. And we find out that she has very strong opinions about outside assistance. She says, you can't rely on the Leaf. They weren't any help, earlier. They're not going to be any help now. So she's very surprised when Sakura is able to help them. But that's something about Chiho's character, is that she's very much like, the Leaf, we cannot depend on other ninja villages. And what a sad state it is that to find the Kazekage, we have to depend on these outsiders. So that's kind of her point of view. So what happens, we've healed Konkuro, and they need to go find Gaara. Kakashi's ninja dogs have found him, and it's about a 3-day journey to reach their base of operations. So what the show does is that travel time is kind of used as time for exposition. So the exposition we get while heading to the Akatsuki lair is we learn about what are called the Jinchuriki. Jinchuriki is the term that people have made for people who have a tailed beast sealed inside of them. Naruto is the Jinchuriki for the 9 tails. Gaara is the Jinchuriki for the 1 tail, etc., etc. You do see Naruto has an interesting point during all of this exposition where he's like, of course, nobody asked how we feel about it or about our experiences. It's just people have assumed and labeled us stuff. That's actually something I have neglected to mention, is Naruto's feelings during this arc. Naruto feels incredibly strongly about saving Gaara because he can relate to the loneliness and the pain that Gaara has felt, because Naruto, like Gaara, is a Jinchuriki. So he's incredibly motivated to save Gaara because he sees himself in Gaara and he doesn't want Gaara to die and be kidnapped because he happens to be the vessel for the One Tails. So Naruto is the character in this arc who feels the most for Gaara's situation because he's in a similar boat. He's also targeted by the Akatsuki, and because of his tailed status. I don't know if I would go as far as saying Naruto feels the most care for Gaara. I think that Kankuro and Tamari are also very emotional about the situation. I definitely would say Naruto is the most vocal and the most adamant, definitely, through this arc about saving Gaara. So during this exposition with Chiho, we find out about the Jinchuriki. We find out that the tailed beast Jinchuriki have been scattered across the world so that it's like a balance of powers between the ninja nations to have a tailed beast. We find out that earlier generations have tried to use Jinchuriki as weapons, and that's kind of what happened to Gaara when his pregnant mother was kind of subjected to the One Tails so that it would pass on to Gaara from the moment he was born. That's how the Sand Village attempted to weaponize their tailed beast. It's kind of interesting because Kakashi knows these kind of things, but we see based on Sakura's reaction that this is the first that she's really hearing of the tailed beast. This might seem weird if it's been a while since you watched part 1, because you're wouldn't Sakura know? She's in the same squad as Naruto. Naruto himself only finds out about his status as holding the tailed beast in the later part of part one. When I say later, I don't mean episode amount because the fillers adds on a lot of episodes later in from the beginning to Sasuke leaving. So it's only about the time that Jiraiya appears in the narrative that Naruto starts to find out he's a Jinchuriki, and it's pretty implied that it's only during his training with Jiraiya that he really learns what it means for him to have the nine tails inside of him, and like how that affects him and his chakra and kind of his being. So for Sakura, she's probably only seen Naruto affected by the nine tails once in the narrative. It has been a while since I've directly watched part one. I think that when Naruto fights Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, that he gets the red eyes and the claws from the nine tails, but I don't believe he goes and gets like the one tail chakra cloak. Naruto does go into nine tails form in part one, but it's during his fight with Sasuke at the Valley of the End, and Sakura isn't there for that. So this exposition dump with Chiho is like the kind of first time that Sakura's hearing about the Jinchuriki, because the Leaf Village is very like hush hush about the tailed beast situation. And even though she is a Chunin now, she's not really prone to a lot of the information that Jonin get. So she's kind of piecing together things. It's kind of implied, it's heavily implied that, Sakura, it's implied that Naruto is the Jinchuriki and that's why he feels so strongly for Gaara. And Sakura, I think, understands this, but it's not till later in the arc that she really understands the implications of this, which was kind of surprising because I thought she did in this exposition dump, but it wasn't until later where you really see her like, oh my god, that's Naruto. So that's their 3 days of travel. So at the end of the 3 days, and it'll cut during this time to the Akatsuki, and they have Gaara in like this weird chakra force field, and he's screaming, and they're kind of just evilly talking like, oh, but it'll take us 3 days to extract the one tails, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else relevant that they talk about. I think that's it. Which makes it convenient that their base is 3 days away from the Sand Village if it takes 3 days to extract it. It's just enough time for our heroes to get there and him to already be dead. We learned from Chiho in her exposition dump that the extraction process for the extraction process for a tailed beast will kill the host. So the Akatsuki have no doubt, like, Gaara will die at the end of this process. So they need to stall for time. And so what happens is that Itachi goes to fight Team Kakashi, and Kisame goes to go fight Team Guy. So I'll start with the Team Guy fight. It's kind of shorter. Kisame, if you don't remember, is the shark guy from part 1, and he has the sword in bandages that absorbs chakra. So he ends up just flooding the battlefield and putting Tenten, Lee, and Neji in water prisons, so they're out for the count for the fight. And Guy just pulls out his nunchucks, opens four or five of the 8 gates, and takes them out. At the same time, Itachi is fighting Naruto and Cast, and Chiho and Sakura do avoid getting trapped in Itachi's eye Ijutsu. Give me one sec. I think there was a point about this fight that I found really funny, so I'll bring it up at the end when I do my closing thoughts. So Naruto immediately gets caught in Itachi's Sharingan, we find out that there's two ways to dispel genjutsu. Genjutsu is just visual jutsu. You can either send a chakra disruption that will overpower it, and if that fails, you need to wait for your teammates to physically touch you, and then they can give you their chakra, and that will disturb the genjutsu. So Chiho and Sakura help in this fight by saving Naruto from the genjutsu, after which Naruto and Kakashi team up. Kakashi goes to go fight Itachi. Kakashi levels him with a fireball, but we find out that Kakashi used an Earth style jutsu to go into the ground, so he avoided getting hit, and it was a clone that got hit. And when he reappears, this is the distraction for Naruto to just straight up Rasengan Itachi. And then we find out that this wasn't the actual Itachi that we fought, but it's like a dead body that looks like Itachi. And similarly, we find out that Kisame isn't the real Kisame. It's like a dead body that is in his form and has his abilities. So those are those fights. And the Akatsuki are then like, oh, should we, send more people to fight them? And they're like, no, we stalled them enough. It's fine. We'll be finished before they get here. So both Team Guy and Team Kakashi, they end up at the base at the same time, and there's a seal on the door. The only way to open the seal is that you need 5 people to pull off the seal at exactly the same time. And then their plan is to bust open the cave door, which is just a big rock. So Team Guy is conveniently 4 people. So they spread out. Neji uses his Byakugan to find them, no problem. They spread out to go open the seals, and they have Naruto and Kakashi will open the 5th seal, where Gaara is, and Sakura is gonna straight up punch the boulder and destroy it because she's super strong. So this is the point where Team Guy is gonna leave the narrative for the rest of the arc. They're gonna get put on the bus and just not gonna be relevant for this point on. So they break the seal, and what happens is that at each of the 4 seal points, so not the main entrance but everywhere else, a clone appears a clone of the person who made it appears. And they're like, oh, we have to fight our doppelgangers. Sorry, we're kind of caught up. We can't help. And we literally won't see them till the end of the arc. They enter the cave, Team Kakashi plus Chiho, and, we know as viewers that Gaara was gonna die in this extraction, but it just hit the main cast. It wasn't like a thing that they knew it was likely, but didn't want to believe it. So Naruto is pissed about Gaara being dead, especially because they are sitting on his body. So Naruto is very pissed. When the Akatsuki meeting broke up, they kind of used chakra astral Skype to talk to each other. Deidara asked Itachi, he's like, how will I know, what's the Nine Tails Jinchuriki like? And he's like, he's going to be the first one who starts yelling and screaming. And so Naruto, true to form, starts yelling and screaming at Deidara, and he's like, perfect, I found him. We learned earlier that the Akatsuki all have a quota, so there's presumably 9 or 10 members, 8, 9, or 10, they're in pairs, and they each should get 1 Jinchuriki. So Deidara got Gaara, so he's fulfilled his quota. So Itachi is kind of staying away from Naruto, he's mine. And Deidara is like, sorry Itachi, sucks to suck, he's here now, I'm gonna go for him. So anyway, back to the present. Naruto is screaming and yelling and losing his cool. His eyes have gone red, so he's definitely already angry, starting to get that nine-tailed influence. And Deidara is like, oh, you fucking want Gaara, guess you'll have to follow me. There's a discussion before Deidara splits off, where he's talking to Sasori and they're talking about art. It's a bit of a weird scene, but I think it makes sense in context. So it characterizes them in a sense. So Sasori says that art is something that can make an object eternally beautiful, and Deidara says that art is something that's explosive and it's in the moment. So they're having this discussion while sitting on Gaara's dead body. Naruto is, pissed. He yells and then he pauses and he listens and he's like, "This is ridiculous. You killed my friend and you're sitting on his body and you're talking about art." And I want to say that one of the characters, probably Naruto, but I can't tell you for sure, throws a kunai actually, and Sasori has like this scorpion tail, like a bone scorpion tail kind of thing, that just deflects it, and he glares at them and he's like, "What do you want?" kind of. And this is before Naruto really goes off the handle. And I think what's interesting is this is characterizing the Akatsuki members. Like, there are 4 enemies in front of them who are very, tense and upset about the current happenings with Gaara, and they completely disregard them to have this discussion about their art. And I think what's interesting is it further shows that, like, we know that the Akatsuki members are good at fighting. We know that they're, like, very strong. And I think this kind of scene just shows that, like, they are so strong to where they aren't even concerned that 4 enemies are in front of them. They're not, like, alert and tense like the cast is. They're very nonchalantly just talking to each other. And I think that's another interesting thing for these characters, that they're not instantly like, "Oh, we're gonna fucking fight." They're like, "Oh no, we're having this argument." So Deidara, in his like Claybird, takes Gaara, and so Naruto, who's lost his school, just immediately leaves the cave. And Kakashi, if you were wondering what Kakashi is like this whole arc, he's like, "Naruto, why are you like this?" So Kakashi follows Naruto, and that leaves Chiho and Sakura to fight Sasori. So I'm going to talk about the Chiho Sakura Sasori fight, and then I will talk about the Naruto Kakashi Deidara fight. This is mostly because the Chiho Sakura fight is really the highlight of the fighting in this arc, and the Kakashi Naruto Deidara is kind of the B side. Note that there is the C side with Team Guy literally fighting themselves this whole arc, but it's very minor and, like, it's not a spectacle. So what happens is that Chiho tells us that Sasori is a puppeteer, and that if puppeteers are good at anything, it's trick weapons and poison. It's her grandson, so she's gonna know kind of his style. And so they kind of strategize a bit before going into battle. They do that anime thing where it's like their mouth is covered and they don't tell the audience, but they strategize. So I'm gonna give you like the broad overview, the fight, kind of somewhere between a play-by-play and a summary. So the first thing Sasori does is shoot out a ton of like kunai, which were pretty implied are all covered in poison. And so he's kind of surprised because Sakura and Chiho are both dodging all of these. He's not surprised that Chiho is able to dodge all of these, but he's like, there's no way that this like young kunoichi, which female ninja, should be able to dodge all of these kunai. She's never seen me fight. She doesn't have the experience to do it. And so we find out that Chiho has attached chakra strings to Sakura and is able to manipulate her like a puppet. And that their current plan is to go up and fucking deck Sasori. The puppet he's in right now, Hiroko, is very physically strong, and so they need to break that shell before they can like do anything to him. So in this kunai knife battle, dodging battle, Sakura does get up there and she does successfully deck Sasori. And after that, Sakura is kind of outside of the focus, and Chiho summons two puppets called the mother and father puppets. And so these puppets are in the image of Sasori's parents, her son and her daughter. And we find out throughout the arc in kind of flashbacks that these are the first two puppets that he ever made. So when she summons them, he's like, what are you going to do? Like, the point of being a puppeteer is to surprise your enemy, and I made those puppets. There's nothing you can do that I don't know you're going to do. The answer is that he's been gone 20 years, and she's, decked out the puppets with new tools. So she summons the mother and father puppet, and they go through some more trick weapons because they're immune to poison. The puppet that he has, I think, summons a bunch of tails or something. So the answer was not to have Sakura dodge through all of those, but to have the mother and father puppet do it. To counter the mother and father puppet, Sasori pulls out the puppet of the third Kazekage. So we learn that Sasori has the ability to take living humans, kill them, and use a special process to make them into puppets, which still preserves any chakra that they have, any jutsu that only they could do, and if they have a kekai genkai, that they're able to, with bloodline limit, Byakugan, Sharingan, etc., the puppet is still able to do them. Normal puppets, like the ones that Chiho has and Kankuro have, can't use jutsu. They can only use whatever like weapons and systems that they have in place. So what's amazing is the implication. So Chiho is horrified because the implication is not only did my grandson leave the village, betray the village, he is the one who kidnapped the third Kazekage, and it's fairly implied that there was an invasion of the village and probably a war. And so Chiho is horrified to find out that her grandson is the reason that this kind of catastrophic event happened in the village that like destroyed tons of lives. So after that, the mother and the third Kazekage's ability is Iron Sand. So it's Gaara's ability, but there's iron, and which Sasori has just spruced up. He's added poison. So it's poisonous iron sand. And so the third Kazekage, who's known as the strongest Kazekage in history, that puppet attacks Chiho and Sakura, and Chiho uses the mother and father puppets as shields. But the problem is, she uses the mother puppet, is that the iron sand clogs up the joints in the puppets. And so the puppets then can't be moved because the joints are full. So he attacks one of them, clogs up one of the puppets. So then he attacks Chiho and Sakura at the same time and says, ha, you can't defend both of you at the same time. What are you gonna fucking do? And we find out that Chiho isn't completely human anymore. She has given up her right arm for a like deployable shield. So she uses that to protect herself and the other puppet to protect Sakura, and then she detaches that arm. So Sasori is like, oh, I see, you two are not also completely human anymore, which will be relevant later in the arc. So after that, the cave that they're in, Sakura, I want to say there's some big attack that destroys it. And I want to say Sakura probably punches the ground, but I don't remember 100%. But they end up in like an outdoor-ish kind of arena, dome, pit setting. And they need to get rid of the third Kazekage puppet, or else they're going to get no traction in the fight, because they can't get to Sasori. So Sakura tells Chiho, look, use me as a human puppet. He can't clog my joints. And Chiho says, with only one arm, I can't I can't do as much as I did earlier in the fight. And Sakura said, it's fine. It's our only option. We get a flashback from Sakura's training with Tsunade that Tsunade really drilled into her the importance of dodging, because as a medical ninja, she cannot get hurt, because if she goes down in a team situation, there's nobody else who can heal her. So we see the kind of like a flash into the beginnings of some of the rigorous training she has with Tsunade, and that's kind of the explanation for us as viewers in how Sakura is able to do so well in this fight, even though she has far less experience, is that she's been training for these kind of situations. She's not trained in the same way as Naruto to have these big ninjutsu that do a lot of damage and to go up close to an enemy to hurt them, and if she doesn't succeed, it's fine. Sakura is trained to be able to do a lot of damage efficiently, and she's also trained to be very nimble and avoid getting hurt. I guess in a sense, Sakura can do damage, but has points in evasion, where Naruto can do damage, and he has put his points into, like, constitution. So, anyway, Sakura goes to attack the third Kazekage, and she does get nicked by one of his attacks, which is poisonous. And so, at this point, Sasori is like, haha, you fool. That poison is going to take effect, numb her body, and you're not going to be able to, she's going to die. And Sakura falls to the ground, Chiho is horrified, and then the next thing, Sakura gets up and smashes the third Kazekage puppet. So we find out that little exposition in the Sand Village where she's like, oh, you guys grow so many herbs, and like, well, some are harder than others. She said we have enough to make 3 doses of the antidote for Sasori's poison. And so she's taken the remaining antidote and used it to make 3 syringes full of the antidote to take with her. So she says that the antidote works, but it nullifies the poison, and it gives her a 3-minute range where any attack will not, like, poison her again. So she's got 3 minutes of iframes for the poison, and then after that, she's clear, like, the poison status is removed, but if she gets hit again, she's poisoned again. So she destroys the puppet, and then she's like, look, we have 3 minutes to defeat this guy, because during these 3 minutes, I can't be poisoned again, even if I take damage. What happens is that... Sorry, I'm looking. She destroys the puppet within the 3 minutes, not immediately. But then afterwards, Sasori is like, haha, you thought that was the only thing I could do? And he summons 100 puppets, which he can control at one time. The narrative says that, like, the more puppets you can control, the, like, better you are as a puppet master. So he summons 10. He summons 100. Chiho summons 10. It's kind of implied to be quantity versus quality here in a sense, because hers are really, like, diverse, high-quality puppets that were made by the first puppet master ever. And his look kind of, like, generic. We had to draw multiple of these. So they look different, but they're not individualized. So the Chiho and Sasori and Sakura are fighting. Chiho's puppets take out a lot of the puppets, and Sakura also helps by dwindling them down. And I have written what I call the lion seal fake out. So what happens is that Chiho gives Sakura a, like, ball, and she said, attack him with this, I'll cover you. So she uses the last remaining of her puppets that are still functioning after the, like, fight with 100 puppets, and covers Sakura, and then Sakura attacks Sasori with this seal that completely seals off your chakra. So it, like, immobilizes him on the wall and seals his chakra. And so they're like, cool. And then something might stab him. at this point. I'm not sure if he gets stabbed. He doesn't get stabbed now. There's 2 vacant cavities in this puppet, and they're like, that's kind of weird. So what happens is that they put the seal on him, and they're like, oh, it worked. And then he's like, surprise, bitch, you thought. And he's in one of the other puppet bodies, and he goes to stab Chiho. And what happens is that Sakura goes and she takes the knife for Chiho. Something I just thought of is that this actually reminds me of Boku no Hero, where All Might says, a hero is somebody whose body moved without them consciously realizing it, and they just jumped into action. I think that this moment for Sakura is one of those moments where she was like, I need to save Chiho. And she does. She gets stabbed. She gets stabbed maybe 3 or 4 inches left of her, like, belly button. So she's impaled, but she's not impaled dead center. And, Chiho is horrified. You've taken the sword from me. You are now poisoned. Because there was only 1 antidote left, and Sakura gave it to Chiho. So the method was, I get an antidote, you get an antidote. We gotta end the fight before we use them both. And so Sakura is impaled by Chiho, and Chiho's kind of stunned, and Sakura's like, please, like, kill him while he's busy. And this is such a cool, like, if you are going to watch any of Naruto, watch this scene, watch this fight with Sakura and Chiho where she's stabbed. Because Sakura is stabbed, and Sasori, is like, haha, kind of taunting, and then Sakura's like, I'm not gonna let you go. And she is healing herself. This is after she's used, the antidote has been used on her, because Chiho got poisoned during the 100 fight, and Sakura said, Chiho, use the antidote. She gets stabbed, and then Chiho stabs the antidote into Sakura. And so Sakura, stabbed, is healing herself around the blade while the blade is still in her body. And this stuns Sasori, because he's like, oh fuck, like, she's gonna keep healing herself. She's immune to my poison. And Sakura says, I'm not gonna let you go. And she holds on. He stabs the blade further into her, I think 2 or 3 times. And she still heals herself through it, so she's not bleeding out. And what ends up happening is that Sasori dejects his arm from the elbow down, and then he has like a knife nub. And so he goes to stab Chiho or Sakura. It's kind of unclear, presumably Sakura. And at this point, the mother and father puppets from earlier rise and stab Sasori. It's kind of shown that because the 3rd Kazekage puppet was destroyed, that the sand, like, you can just shake it out of the joints. So that's what Chiho did with those 2 puppets. And the pose that they stab Sasori in is the same pose of his parents holding him that he had a photo of when he was a baby. And when he first created the puppets, he had the puppets hold him in the middle after they had died. And so it's kind of a macabre callback to that moment. It's very touching. Again, I do, of any episode in this arc, of any couple of scenes, the scene of Sakura getting stabbed all the way through the end of this fight, I do recommend watching. So he's been killed by the mother and father puppet. And we find out that there's a core that has his heart in it. I believe the subtitle says it has the kanji for scorpion. And so stabbing that core is the only way to kill Sasori. You need human, or you need to be alive to produce chakra. And so he somehow experimented on himself to where he has the minimal amount of like core humanity to still produce chakra. And that's how he avoided the lion seal earlier. He put his core into another puppet. So as he's getting killed, it's kind of a slow death. And I don't know if it's just like an anime dramatic kind of slow death, or if it's just it takes a while to die kind of slow death. But he's like, okay, Sakura, well, he doesn't call her by name, but he's like, you did a really good job, and your reward is I'm going to tell you the info about Orochimaru that you wanted. He says, I have a subordinate who's a spy for Orochimaru, who's going to meet me in 10 days at noon at Tenchi Bridge. And then he dies. Chiho, at the end of this fight, turns to Sakura and says, like, he let himself be killed. And I think that's, she doesn't flat out say it, but she does kind of imply it, because she says that Sasori saw through her attack in the end with the mother and the father puppet, but he didn't dodge it. I think that that's an interesting ambiguity to have, that it wasn't, you know, a complete victory by our protagonists, and it wasn't a complete loss for the villain. I think it's interesting to say, like, he saw what was going to happen, he knew it was going to happen, and he allowed it to happen. My personal interpretation kind of this is twofold. I think part of it is being surprised by how far Chiho went in this fight for Sakura. After Sakura is stabbed, and he's stabbed with a mother and father puppet, Chiho uses what's called the reanimation jutsu on Sakura. The reanimation jutsu is something that only she knows how to do, and it would bring somebody back to life, but it will kill them. So it takes your life force. And the jutsu was something that she was trying to create so that she could bring life to the father and mother puppets, so that Sasori could, like, have that kind of feeling of having his parents back. So I think that part of it is he's impressed by Sakura and how far and how young she is and how well she fought and how far she was willing to go. And I think part of him was stunned by Chiho's, like, how far she was willing to go, not only for another person. I don't think that's what surprised him per se, but how far she is willing to go for this stranger who is from a leaf village, because of how kind of against outside interference Chiho is. I think that Sasori seeing this, I interpret it that him seeing her go this far really contributed him to being like, you know, like, I want to, like, if there's a time to die, like, this is the time. I do think it's an interesting fight in anime, in shonen anime, because it is ambiguous, and you don't really see that often. Usually it's a complete victory or a complete loss. So it's interesting to see a quieter moment. So after this fight, Sakura is like, okay, Chiho, like, we need to go to the village to, you know, make an antidote so you're not going to die. The antidote the poison takes 3 days, so they'll just make it. And Chiho says, no, like, I have something I still need to do, and we need to go complete our mission and find the Kazekage. So Sakura, like, puts Chiho, like, rests her arm over her shoulder, and they go slowly but surely to pursue Naruto, Kakashi, and Deidara. At the same time that this whole Chiho fight has been happening, Team Guy, if you're ever wondering, they are still fighting their mirror images. So they're doing that. So back to the Chiho Sakura fight is now over. I will now tell you what has been happening with Kakashi and Naruto and Deidara at the same time. So Naruto's pissed and he's following Deidara, who's trying to separate Naruto and Kakashi because he's like, look, I could totally take Naruto on his own. Naruto is still pretty implied to be weaker than Gaara, so he's like, if I can defeat the fucking Kazekage, I can defeat Naruto. But this Kakashi guy is smart. He's got experience. He's got ninjutsu. Like, I don't want to take him and Naruto. So he tries to shake Kakashi off by using some of his clay, exploding clay, makes them into grasshoppers, destroys logs and stuff. But Kakashi is able to fake him out he tricks the clay because it's proximity based and not actual human based. So he uses the shadow clone to get back and to Naruto. So Naruto's pissed and he's like, we need to fight him. Come on, Kakashi, why are you so slow? And Kakashi is like, look, Naruto, you're a close range fighter. He's a long range fighter. This isn't going to work for you at all. You need somebody who's really smart or somebody who has long range jutsu. And Naruto's like, oh, damn, if only Shikamaru was here. And Kakashi is like, Naruto, if only, I'm a Jonin and I'm smarter than Shikamaru and I know all sorts of ninjutsu. Like, you need to agree to work with me. You're so angry right now that we will not be able to save Gaara. This does, like, snap Naruto back, and he's like, okay, like, what do we need to do? So, they do that, like, whisper thing. And Naruto's like, they're, chasing Deidara. And Naruto's like, is it ready yet? And Kakashi's like, I am not a chakra rel like you are. It's going to take some time. And he pulls up his Sharingan. Well, he had his Sharingan out the whole time. And he said, yeah, it's ready. And he has this thing that we don't know the name of it. It's new Sharingan, but I will tell you because I know how Naruto ends. It's Mangekyo Sharingan. And he needed time to get a lot of chakra for it. And he uses this space-time whirly jutsu. And he tries to, like, take all of Deidara, but he only succeeds in taking his arm. So Deidara now has no arms, and they end up crashing or fighting somewhere. They've gone from, like, in between a ravine jumping on logs to, like, a forest. Where they are geographically, that there is a forest when we left from the sand village, which is a desert, is beyond me, but they are in a forest. So Deidara is like, look, I'm basically fucked. I'm out of clay. I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do if I have to fight these two. I should have listened to Sasori and prepared more. And so Naruto, in typical Naruto fashion, uses shadow clones, uses some Rasengan, destroys the clay bird that Deidara was on, and gets Gaara's body back. After which, we find out what we knew as viewers because of the exposition. But Naruto, this is when it hits him, like, Gaara is dead. He is dead. And Naruto fucking loses it. And he goes and gets what they call the Nine-Tails Fox Cloak. Nine-Tails Cloak. And he gets one tail. And then it starts to form another tail. And we find out, we get like a little flash that Kakashi got the seal tag from Jiraiya. And he's like, if Naruto starts to lose it, you need to use this. And so Kakashi stops Naruto with the seal tag. At which point, let me check over. Okay. While Naruto was going ham, he does attack Deidara with the Rasengan and basically bodies him. But we find out it was a clay clone, and Deidara was like, thank God, like, that would not have gone well for me. Then Kakashi uses the seal tag. At which point, Sakura and Chiho catch up with Deidara, Kakashi, and Naruto. Deidara goes kind of for an all-or-nothing attack. He swallows clay, because, remember, his clay needs to interact with his mouth. I don't know why. Hopefully it'll tell us later. And he eats it, and he's like, haha, you fools. I'm gonna do a big attack. Team Guy, I didn't write it in my notes, but Team Guy also catches up conveniently at the same time that Chiho and Sakura catch up. So Neji used his Byakugan, and he can be like, oh shit, this is a big attack, get away. So Deidara explodes, but it flashes to different characters, and they're all kind of like, we're not gonna make it in time. At which point, Kakashi pulls out his new Sharingan and is able to like absorb the explosion or make it go away. It's a space-time jutsu. It hasn't told us how it works yet, but I'm sure it will later. At which point, now there's no enemy left, and the landscape is barren again because it all exploded, so it looks like we're in the Sand Village again. Naruto is completely torn over Gaara's death. Like, he's crying over, his eyes are red. Red as in Ninetales influence red. He's a sobbing mess, and, you know, Kankuro, well, I'll get back to that. He's a sobbing mess, and he's really feels a lot, and the characters are just kind of like, Chiho, too, is just kind of like, oh, like, you know, he died from the tailed beast extraction, and Naruto loses it. He's like, you don't understand what it's like. You label us without asking how we feel. Like, Gaara died all alone. He worked so hard to become Kazekage, and he tried to protect his village, and this is what happened. So it's a very emotional kind of moment. This is also conveniently the time where I'm looking at my notes. This is conveniently the time where Kankuro appears. So Kankuro and Temari weren't able to follow in this arc because the village was avoiding repeating the mistakes of the third Kazekage. And so they were forced kind of, Kankuro was recovering, and Temari and her, like, ninja were on border patrol. And so Kankuro catches up. No, not yet. They will catch up soon. So Naruto is pissed. Chiho goes to heal Gaara, and Sakura immediately knows what she's going to do, that Chiho's going to sacrifice her life force for Gaara. Naruto has no idea what's happening, and Guy and Kakashi don't know what this jutsu is because it's a Chiho exclusive, pre-order at GameStop, but they know that, you know, any jutsu of that kind of magnitude is going to take a great sacrifice. And so they're forlorn, Sakura is forlorn. Naruto is kind of naive, because Chiho's like, okay, I'm gonna save him. I'm going to save Gaara. And Naruto is kind of like, really? Like, please do whatever you can. So Chiho goes to bring Gaara back to life. Bring me to life. Naruto AMV 2007. Anyway, and she doesn't have enough energy to do it because she's so worn out from the fight, and she's already used this jutsu on Sakura earlier. And in kind of a touching moment, Naruto goes up and says, like, is there anything, like, I can do? Like, please use my chakra. And Chiho's kind of surprised, and she looks at Naruto, and she says, put your hands on top of mine. And so it, like, Naruto, like, feels pain, and this is where it kind of makes it more clear that this jutsu is pulling off of your life force and not your chakra. Because Naruto has so much chakra. If it pulled chakra, it wouldn't really matter because he's a walking chakra rail, but it's pulling his life force. So even Naruto is, like, in pain and discomfort. So Chiho, it's kind of, her last words are, Sakura, you have so much potential. Don't you dare ever put this much energy and fight into protecting somebody with one foot in the grave. And this experience with Naruto and Sakura and seeing how far they were willing to go for Gaara, and also for all intents and purpose, like the Sand Ninja and the Sand Village that they're not a part of, has changed her, has really affected her like worldview, and that's why she was willing to die to bring Gaara back, is because of the influence that Sakura and Naruto had on her. The narrative implies that it's Naruto's effect on her because they pointed out earlier, Kakashi pointed out, that Naruto has this ability to make friends with the simplest of words. But I personally think that Sakura would have had the bigger influence on Chiho than Naruto, because Sakura was the one fighting with Chiho and who literally like nearly died taking a sword for her. So I think that where Naruto, I mean maybe it's a combination of both, where she saw Naruto's words, but she heard Naruto's words but saw Sakura's actions. So I think the narrative points more towards Naruto with a sprinkle of both, where I think personally that it's because of Sakura was a sprinkle of Naruto. But anyway, either way, I should say, Chiho dies and Sakura is incredibly torn up, and she is the only character kind of recognizing that like Chiho has sacrificed her life for Gaara. And so Sakura is incredibly sad, and she is mourning Chiho in the following scenes. Gaara wakes up, and at the same time, the Sand Ninja appear. Tamari, Kankuro, Tamari's squad, they appear, and so they don't know Gaara died at all. And they're kind of checking on Gaara. Lord Kazekage, are you okay? Oh, thank God you're okay. Thank God you're safe. So it's a bittersweet scene, but it's good to see that the village appreciates that Gaara, because Gaara's motivation is to be somebody who's needed by other people, and this moment is kind of showing him that he is that person. Naruto points out that, Gaara had died and that Chiho brought him back, to where Kankuro kind of is the one who breaks Naruto's naive bubble, because he's like, oh, Chiyo is just, she's resting, she used the sweet new jutsu, and Kankuro is like, no, that was a jutsu made by the Puppeteer Corps that reanimates a puppet, but you die using it. So he's the one who tells Naruto, like, Chiho is dead. Which, it makes sense that that's Kankuro's role, especially because he's a puppeteer and so is Chiho. But I do think it's interesting that Kankuro was the one to break the news. After that, yeah, I already explained why the delay was. Everybody returns back to the Sand Village. There's a touching moment where everyone's excited that Gaara is back, but he said, put Chiho's hearse, kind of her body, first in the procession, not me. And there's a whole moment of Baki declares an entire moment of silence for Chiho. There's 4 ninja who are holding kind of her hearse, and then her brother and Sakura are in the middle of the procession. After which, the closing kind of actions of the arc is that the Leaf Ninja, Team Guy and Team Kakashi, immediately return back to the Leaf Village with no break, and because they are going to go tell Tsunade about how the mission went, and Sakura wants to tell Tsunade the information about Tenchi Bridge, which is the information about Sasuke and Naruto and Orochimaru. So that is all that happened in the Kazekage Rescue arc, the first arc of Naruto Shippuden. And there were a couple of notes that I had about the arc while I was doing it. So here's my kind of assorted variety hour, my opinion on the arc. I've given you the summary, so here's, my own opinion. Tamari in this arc, I think, is very underused. I think that she's a plot device more than a character. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but it was disappointing to see because I love Tamari's combat style. In part one, she can summon a weasel. She has wind powers. She's long ranged. She's versatile. She's a Jonin by this point in the series. So, like, she's not weak. And that's something that I would want to see more of. Hopefully, future arcs will show us Tamari fighting. But I think that, in this arc, she was ultimately a guide to the village, and she was kind of our viewpoint for the political struggle and the conflict between saving the Kazekage and not. I just think it makes sense, but I would have wanted to see more. Chiho's brother, Ebiso, was useless, but he was good. I think he was useless in the sense that he didn't really do anything. He tells us a bit about the third Kazekage to Tamari, but otherwise he doesn't do anything. But I think that why I think that he's still good even though he's useless is that he fleshes out the world. Like, people exist outside of being relevant to the narrative sometimes, which might sound weird because I just said how Tamari should have been used more, but it shows that, like, Chiho has a family, she has a brother, and, like, not all characters in the universe are for fighting. And I just think it's an interesting way to characterize her, and just, like, life exists outside of ninja battles. My next note is "Gotta" line. So, you could have been paid to write a lot of Kankuro and Naruto's line in this arc if you just said "Gotta" in different amounts of pain and anguish. This is particularly prominent for Kankuro in the first 10 episodes or so of the arc. To which case I'm like, oh, it's done. Kankuro is going to speak now. And then they just pass that line over to Naruto. So I thought that was kind of funny. The next one is kind of a grammar note about Japanese grammar. For anyone who doesn't know me in real life, I take Japanese in college. And I find it interesting to notice what kind of speech styles characters use. So the characters in Naruto use a fantastic use of tanshukuke and shoryaku. So what that means in English is shoryaku is kind of when characters say parts of the line but then cut it off. So, like, sore wa chotto is kind of like, oh, like, that's a bit much, but they don't say anything else. And tanshukuke is kind of like abbreviations of longer Japanese phrases. And it's been really great to watch Naruto just to see what a natural way of speaking is. And it really illustrates, like, of course, not to say that, like, anime is how normal people talk. It's obviously not, just like how television isn't how, Americans speak in a day-to-day situation. But it's been useful to watch Naruto and see kind of examples of how that speech style or those speech features is used. That's my only grammar note. The next note I had about the arc was Chiho's death is full of missed opportunities. It has a lot of weight if she dies, but it does make me kind of sad, and not in the sense of, like, a tragedy sense, but, like, missed potential sense. Because Chiho could have been a very interesting character for Sakura's growth as a character. I think that, of course, like, her and Tsunade, like, that's her, mentor. But I think it would have been amazing to see Sakura, like, work with, like, Chiho cares so much about Sakura, even in this arc. So to see a character who could have really been influential on Sakura's character growth as, like, a person is kind of disappointing. It makes sense that Naruto's gonna have the most people who care about him because he's the main character, but it does suck because it's like, I would have loved to see, like, Sakura goes to the Sand Village and fucking visits her grandma Chiho. Like, I totally want to see, like, Chiho teaching Sakura what she knows about, like, medical jutsu and, like, poisons and things that Tsunade, doesn't focus on. Like, I want to see Chiho being like, don't you ever rely on, like, yeah, rely on your comrades, but like you can do anything you need to do yourself. Like, let me teach you some like sweet dodge maneuvers, or like let me show you some really like clever ways of like using your ninja tools in battle. Like, it's just sad that like Chiho could become a mentor, but she dies and doesn't have that opportunity. Something else that is amazing in this arc, and I don't know if they'll continue, but I hope they do, is Sakura does get a lot of characterization in this arc. Part of it is narrative necessity. In part one, her kind of role is as the third wheel of the series, and she has occasional moments, but she doesn't really have a lot of moments where she shines. And so it makes sense that she needs to get characterized a lot in part two to show her development. I love Sakura. Even part one Sakura, like, I'll give a hard time, but she's also 12 in part one. So it's like, yeah, like, you're a 12-year-old civilian going into, like, ninja world. So she's just really well set up in part two. Part two doesn't expect us to be like, oh, Sakura is cool because we said so, because it'll show like Sakura can do this thing now, flashback, but this is the training that Sakura did to get there, and I just really appreciated that in the narrative. Something I did notice is different ways that characters are presented as being strong. So this is an ongoing theory. I will have it pinned down in later arcs, definitely. But right now I'm calling it the difference between active strong and passive strong. So I think that Naruto, for example, is categorized as active strong. Naruto is called by other characters strong because of his ability to deal damage. To where I think that Sakura, particularly in this arc, has been categorized as what I'm going to call passive strong. Sakura, of course, is able to do a lot of damage. She does it with the boulder, and she does it with the third Kazekage puppet and Hiroko. And the characters are like, oh, like, that's amazing, like, she did that damage. But the moments of the narrative where it really focuses on Sakura being strong is when she's dealing damage and still continuing to fight and to get up and be strong. So that's why I'm going to call it passive strong. I think it's interesting to show that a character can be strong because of their ability to do damage or their ability to take damage. I want to see how this develops in later arcs and see if this distinction holds up or not. I'm currently halfway through the Tenchi Bridge arc, and Sakura is kind of been degraded a bit. She's still showing passive strong, but she's not showing any active strong. So I'm wondering how much this scale is going to figure in, and I also do think, speculatively, of course, that Sakura's character, like strength as a character, is gonna waver. Same with Sakura's characterization is going to waver whenever Sasuke is around. Naruto is pretty well defined as I am strong no matter who my opponent is, because one of my greatest traits is my stubbornness and my determination. But I think this is, of course, like my theory at this point, is that because Sakura's characterization, like her motivation for getting stronger is she wants to be able to help get Sasuke back. But I think that also, like, she wants to help people and she wants to protect people in general, and that's why she's a medical ninja. And I think because so much of her characterization has happened in the absence of Sasuke, that the reintroduction of Sasuke is going to weaken her characterization, because it's going to throw her closer to the character that we saw in part one rather than the character that we've really seen shine in the Kazekage Rescue arc. This is my theory, and we'll find out if it changes later in the rest of the series, but this is my idea for now. My next note is Team Guy, too useful to live. What I mean by that is that it's just kind of funny that, like, Team Guy was so needed in the arc, in the sense that, like, Kishimoto sent up the 5 seals, so you needed 4 more people to break it, and 4 is the amount of ninja team, to where even Team Guy lampshades it by saying, this seal is a perfect thing to do because ninja teams are usually in groups of 4 or 3, and they would have to wait for backup, which is the perfect stalling tactic. So even like the characters in universe know that this is like a method to stall. But I put too useful to live because it's just funny to me that like they're all chunin except for Neji, who is a jonin at this point, and Kishimoto's like, okay, we need you. We're gonna have this cool sick fight with Kisame, and we need you to open the seal. But we need you to do something else because it would not be a compelling fight if each fight was like 3 or 4 people against 1 person. So we need you to do something. The clone fighting is resolved because Lee is like, dude, they copied us at the moment we pulled off the seal. We just need to be stronger than we were at that moment. So the answer to beating their clones was just to use one of their special abilities. So it was very dumb because it's like, you guys cannot be this stupid. Like, why did none of you just be like, oh, let me use one of my better techniques, and we could have gone and helped our allies. So I realize that's not the characters being dumb, it's plot necessity, but it is kind of funny. Hopefully that kind of tactic isn't something that comes up in the later arcs a lot. But it did in this arc, and I do think that it kind of brings humor, or like I face palmed while watching the show, so that's something to note. Chiho, I think, is a successful use of exposition. Exposition dumps are nothing unusual in anime. They're not unusual in shonen. It makes sense. World building has to be done. I don't think I would... Exposition doesn't bother me. For me, exposition doesn't make a show like bad, and I don't think it makes a show like great. I think it's a neutral for me. So I think Chiho is a good way to introduce exposition because as an outside character from the Sand Village, she has a different perspective, and so for her to talk about things is pretty effective, I think, because she's telling Team Kakashi about the Sand Village if she talks about the third Kazekage because they don't know as outsiders, or she's saying Gaara is taken because he's this thing, and when Sakura is like, what's a Jinchuriki, she doesn't have the hang-ups that Kakashi has. Like, I'd imagine that Kakashi would deflect and be like, oh, it's this super secret thing I can't tell you about. To where Chiho is an outsider, she doesn't know that that's a like taboo in the League Village, and I don't think she would care either as a character. And so it makes sense for Chiho to be the voice of, this is what the Jinchuriki is. It doesn't make sense for Kakashi to do it, and it doesn't make sense for Naruto to do it, given how he says later in the arc, it's a label you've applied to us without trying to understand us or our feelings. So I do really like Chiho's use as our exposition machine in this arc. We've got 2 more notes for this. Sakura did have a moment that was kind of like an idiot ball, I have to say. And when Itachi appears, and we find out it's like an Itachi clone, so Kakashi obviously knows what Itachi looks like. Chiho doesn't care, she's not from the village. And Naruto has seen Itachi. But Sakura's like, who's that? And I cracked up, because I absolutely did. My housemate was in the room, and I paused Crunchyroll and stopped knitting, and I said, look. And I was cracking up. Because Itachi looks like Sasuke. There is no way that you would... And he has Sharingan. There's no way you would look at Itachi and say, I wonder who the strange man with Sharingan is. All the Uchihas... Sorry, I slammed my desk and I spiked the audio. All of the Uchihas are dead in this point in the narrative. All we know is that there's Sasuke and there's Itachi. Everyone died in the Uchiha clan massacre. So for Sakura to see some fucker with Sharingan who has black hair and these like Gucci bags under his eyes and be like, who is that? It's just like ridiculous to me. To the point where I think the show knows it's ridiculous, because in the next episode it superimposes a picture of Sasuke's face over Itachi, and then she's like, oh my god, it's Itachi. Then she's like, oh, it's Sasuke's brother. But it's just like, he looks like Sasuke. Of course it's Sasuke's brother. just think that's the really funny moment. Like, it wouldn't make sense outside of somebody who watched Naruto, but like, it's a pretty, like, it's in my top 10 Naruto funny moments. My last Sakura, he looks like Sasuke. Who else is he gonna be but his goddamn brother? So the last note I had about the arc is about Shizune, and Shizune's flaw right now is that she's overly cautious. She's been butting heads with Tsunade about who to send on missions. At the end of the arc, when they find out that the mission was a success, she's still like, why did you send Team Kakashi? It was a risk because Naruto's a Jinchuriki. To which Tsunade says, I sent him because he's a Jinchuriki and he's the only one who understands. And so I think that Shizune's being overcautious about the abilities of Team Kakashi, and I do think that this is going to be like her major flaw. It definitely seems like it's going to be what's causing the tension between her and Tsunade, but I do think that it's her character flaw. So those are all of my assorted notes on the Kazekage Rescue arc. Definitely, I think, was a strong arc to start the series on. It's not, to me, going to be as memorable as the Zabuza arc, but, you know, I don't know if I could say that's because it's the show itself or just because I'm much older, I'm in a different part of my life, I'm less in my formative years than, you know, when I was in middle school. So, but I do think that the Kazekage arc is incredibly strong. I didn't feel watching it that it was a slog. It wasn't an edge of my seat kind of thing, but I definitely wanted to know what happened. I definitely stayed up till 4 a.m. watching some of these on multiple days. So I do think that the Kazekage Rescue arc is a pretty solid arc in a shonen. Didn't go on too long, I don't think. It was the right length. And I'm halfway through the Tenchi Bridge arc, which hasn't been as great as the Kazekage Rescue arc. But, you know, I'm hopeful. So I'll see you guys next time when we talk about the Tenchi Bridge arc, which current ideas about it is, Sai, why are you discount Sasuke? Sasuke, why are you like this? Orochimaru, why are you creepy? Orochimaru, do you use feminine Japanese speech style? Naruto, why? Well, Naruto, I was gonna be like, why are you like this? But it makes sense that he's so angry. Sakura, you can dodge things. Don't stand in awe at Naruto. You know he's like this. And Yamato, not Kakashi, but pretty great. So with those thoughts, I hope you watch some Naruto. I hope you watch some shonen if you're not going to watch Naruto, or you've already seen Naruto. Hunter x Hunter is the next show I would recommend. And with those words, see you guys after I finish the Tenchi Bridge arc. 32 episodes of Naruto down, and I have 468 left to go on my first watch of Naruto Shippuden.